What's up everyone? Welcome back to my channel. My name is Matthew Branch. I'm a first year medical student and I'm also a music producer. At this point in time, I feel like it's almost cliche to say that 2020 was a weird year. 2020 was awful.
2020 was so weird, man.
Man, I'm so glad 2020 is over.
You know what I mean? I'm sure you're all very familiar with these type of comments. It is true that 2020 was a very strange year. The COVID-19 pandemic swept through the world and threw everyone off balance. Everyone was affected differently. And I'm not gonna lie, in the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, it didn't really affect me in a negative way. In fact, it was kind of beneficial to my life in the beginning. I was getting some extra paid time off at work. I was getting to stay home and hang out and work on different projects. And I was getting stimulus checks in the mail. Not too bad. I don't mean to sound insensitive because I know this is a very serious condition and it did affect a lot of people, but this was just the nature of my reality. I didn't really feel the effects until I started medical school in July of 2020. Going through my whole first semester of medical school in the midst of a pandemic was unusual to say the least. In normal circumstances, almost the entire medical school curriculum would be presented in person and I would have been required to go into campus almost every single day. But because of the COVID-19 pandemic, my experience in medical school so far has been presented almost entirely virtually. Aside from going to campus a couple times a week for certain labs like anatomy lab or because I'm in a DO program, OMM lab, all of the material that's been presented to us in medical school has been online up to this point. And although it was unexpected and unusual to go through my first semester of medical school this way, I don't think it was all bad. And in today's video, I'm going to be talking about the pros and the cons of virtual medical school. Now we'll start with the cons because they're a lot more obvious. In fact, you can probably guess what they are. The first and most obvious negative aspect of virtual medical school is that I haven't had the opportunity up until this point to meet my medical school classmates. Like I said in the introduction, I do go to campus a couple times a week for things like anatomy lab, but it's been a little bit hard to develop relationships with my peers for a couple reasons. First, every time that we see each other, we're required to wear 2 professional grade masks as well as a face shield. And on top of that, the time that we do get to interact face to face is very brief. It's just before the lab. So because of these 2 factors, the extent of my relationship with other students has been pretty surface level up to this point.
Hey man, what'd you think of that test?
It was hard.
Me too. Alright, see you later.
While I have met several classmates this way, it's been a little challenging to develop enriching and collaborative relationships in this socially distanced way that we're interacting at this point. Personally, one of the things I was most looking forward to in coming to medical school was actually meeting my classmates and getting to interact with a diverse student body. And it has been a little bit disappointing not to be able to meet and form new relationships with my peers. The second negative aspect about virtual medical school is that I haven't had the opportunity to meet and to form relationships with faculty members. In addition to meeting all of my peers and coming to medical school, another thing that I was really looking forward to was to meet and to interact with all the different professors and faculty members. It's a little bit strange to watch someone on Zoom deliver countless lectures, but to never have even introduced myself or to have talked to them in person. It's a little bit like the relationship that you might have with a YouTuber where you've watched all of their videos and you kind of get a sense of what they're like, but they don't even know who you are. You've never had the chance to talk to them. So it's a little bit of a weird relationship. All my professors, they seem like really interesting people. They're all established scientists and clinicians. They have all this cool research going on and they just seem like people that I would like to talk to. And I really do think it would be a valuable opportunity for myself and my classmates to form relationships with these people. They get to talk to them about their experiences and just to ask them questions in person. The last negative aspect about starting medical school virtually that I'll mention today is that we've kind of had to miss out on like a lot of in-person events that we would have otherwise been able to participate in. The first big event that we missed out on was orientation, where normally it would have been a week where we would have been going in, meeting all of our classmates, we would have met a lot of the faculty members, and we would have been able to talk to the upperclassmen about their experiences in medical school. We would have been hearing from all the different student organizations in in-person presentations, but because of the pandemic, that wasn't able to happen. Another event that we missed was the white coat ceremony. And I will say that for both orientation and the white coat ceremony, the faculty at my school did a really good job coordinating a virtual orientation and a virtual white coat, but it wasn't quite the same as it would have been had it been able to happen in person. Aside from the white coat and the orientation, there's also just all kinds of other in-person events that haven't been able to happen. Like all of the organizations and clubs on campus, normally they'd be doing all these in-person activities like volunteering. They'd be having speakers come to the school to give us lectures and things like that. And I know everything I'm saying right now sounds very negative and like, oh my gosh, why are you complaining so much? You're in medical school. And the truth is that despite these negative aspects of virtual medical school, I still have enjoyed myself so far. And you know, these weren't so bad as they seem. These are just kind of the objective reality of what I've been experiencing so far. So now that we've spent so much time moping and groping and pointing out all the negative aspects of virtual medical school, let's talk about some of the positive aspects of virtual medical school, because there are several. And even though I did have to use my imagination and get a little bit creative when thinking about what could possibly be the positive aspects of going to medical school online, I was able to come up with some serious upsides to doing medical school virtually. For one thing, working from home just gives me more time. Under normal circumstances, I would be going to campus for lecture almost every single day, and that's a commute there and back. On top of that, those labs that I mentioned that we're still doing would normally be much longer than they are right now. At this point, we're going into lab for about an hour for anatomy lab. Normally, in past years, if I remember correctly, they were going in for like 2 to 3 hours at a time for these labs. And so that's giving us back several hours every single week that we would have otherwise been spending on campus that now we can take and focus into our studies and preparing for exams. And after that, just have some extra time to relax. Another thing that I'll mention is that watching lecture from home allows us the option to kind of multitask while we're tuning into the lecture. For instance, if I'm watching a lecture that I'm already pretty familiar with, I might clean the kitchen or organize my things while I'm listening to the lecture. And this is something that wouldn't have been possible to do if it was an in-person lecture. So again, that's an instance where I'm able to get time back because I'm taking medical school virtually. My class has actually had several faculty members tell us that we're doing really well as a class and probably even better than many of the classes in previous years as far as our academics. And it makes me wonder whether my class is just exceptionally talented, of course we are, or whether maybe that extra time that we have because of virtual medical school has contributed to us doing better in our classes. The second positive aspect of virtual medical school is that in that time period where I was adjusting to being a student, I didn't have to worry about the social aspect of medical school. Now, normally when I started medical school, I would have been meeting a whole bunch of new people all at once. I would have probably been spending time with my classmates and going out on the weekend to all these restaurants and these bars that are right around my house, studying in bigger study groups that may have a tendency to be less focused than I am when I'm studying at home alone in my room. And all of this just kind of takes time and energy that I didn't have to worry about because I started medical school in a virtual environment. Although it would have been really fun to meet all my classmates, I do think that not having to really think about the social aspect and just be able to completely focus on my studies probably helped me to get adjusted to the routine of being a medical student a little faster. And because I've spent this time adjusting to being a medical student and getting used to the routine, once I finally do get to meet my classmates, this won't need to compete for my attention quite as much. And the last positive aspect of virtual medical school that I'm going to talk about today is that these unique challenges that my class has been presented in starting medical school in a virtual environment will lead us to grow in unique ways. what unique challenges am I talking about? I'm talking about the challenge of dealing with feelings of social isolation and self-doubt, the challenge of having to motivate yourself intrinsically without talking to anyone else, and also the challenge of just navigating a virtual environment, something that I think is going to be very prevalent in the future of medicine in the form of telehealth. And one of my favorite self-help authors, Ryan Holiday, has a book called The Obstacle is the Way. If you've never read this book, I highly recommend it. The premise behind The Obstacle is the Way is that the way that we grow as people, the way that we can become our best selves is to face adversity head on and to learn from overcoming challenges. So I really think that on top of the classical challenges that come with a medical education, such as rigorous coursework and learning how to manage your very limited time, my class, because we've been in this virtual environment, has been presented with all these unique challenges that will allow us to grow in very unique ways that I think will be of great benefit to us down the line in our career as physicians. So that's really it. Those are what I perceive to be the pros and cons of virtual medical school. And I'll leave you with one more thought that I had recently. And that's just that even though of course it's natural to look at this pandemic as this awful thing that's thrown us all off of our routines, instead of looking at it as such a burden, I think it's also possible to switch our perspective to look at the more positive aspects of what this pandemic has brought us. And I think there are some significant positive aspects to consider. So that's it. Thanks so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed the content, please go ahead and leave a like. It really helps new YouTubers like myself out. And if you want to see more content like this, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Why not? Am I right? And furthermore, I'd like to hear from you. So if you've made it this far in the video, go ahead and drop a comment down below. I want to hear what's one positive thing that you think that you've gained from the COVID-19 pandemic. Once again, my name is Matthew Branch. Thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.